oh, it's coming. It's just gonna come. I'm gonna start crying. Give me a moment. When my husband, and my brother here, have said, the reason why I'm crying is because it moves me. It like touches my spirit. And that's why I do this work. Because that's why we all do this work. And that's why everybody's involved in the Red Nation. It's because of our total and absolute love for our people, for the land, for all of our relatives, for all our kids. And because we want to be free. And there are moments in this work when we have been free. Even when we're staring down the barrel of a gun, which we've had to do doing this work. In those moments, you actually have control over your own destiny. And I said earlier in the police violence panel, to be Indigenous is to live in a constant state of containment and detention, because that's how settler colonialism functions. And so to do work towards liberation means to be free. And when we are able to talk in these ways, when I'm able to cry in front of you, and it's not tears of sadness at all. It's tears of like love. I have so much love in my heart right now. And to be able to have these conversations, to be really open in this way, like we have been at this conference, we're free. We're free in these spaces to be who we actually are. And we're criminalized for it, right? We're oppressed for it. People try to silence us. The system engages in multiple tactics. And part of what this work means to me, and the reason why I do it, is because it's the only thing I know to do to be free and to feel free. And the only way that happens is through the actual struggle itself. It's not through, I have a PhD, right? I'm an academic. I've been to Yale. You know, I know what that whole game is about. And I can think and read my way as much as I want about power. I can teach it in the classroom, which I do, to try to radicalize people there. But it wasn't until the Red Nation was formed, and I not only got out on the streets, but I literally like bled and sweat and cried and laughed with my relatives, my comrades who organized, but also my relatives, right? The water even and the land, that I knew what it felt like to be free. And so our philosophy of organizing on the Red Nation is that liberation comes through the struggle we engage in together. And that struggle is imperfect, it's organic, right? Because we come from different backgrounds and orientations. We all have different politics, and we can argue. There's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of complexity in that. But it's the coming together, and not necessarily working things out, but understanding that our common goal is liberation. It's the actual doing of that that liberates us. And so freedom is a dream. Nick talked about the distinction between freedom and liberation. I'm using them somewhat interchangeably. Freedom is a dream, but it's also in the here and now. And that here and now is this struggle. It's everything that's happened at this conference. It's all of us in this room together. And this isn't like a kumbaya kind of thing, because I think that's bullshit. Because this work is really hard. It's really hard. Trying to understand the fields of struggle, the different politics, is like a whole education in and of itself. But we're free when we're actually doing it in the material stuff of the struggle. And that's where and how you learn what liberation really means to you. That's how you develop politics, is through the actual struggle. It's not through reading it. It's not through just like talking about it over coffee, like hipsters do. You know, that's not where it happens. It happens like really going through the shit together. And it's almost like this like weird transformation that I experienced going through when I became a serious revolutionary, because I am a revolutionary, and becoming a serious organizer, that you go through that process and like you can't turn back, you know? It's Nick said he's like he used it. He's like, I'm addicted to it, and that's like a funny. That's kind of. I mean, addiction has like a pejorative connotation, right? But you literally transform yourself and you become embedded in the struggle, and the struggle claims you and you claim it. It's almost like you become a relative to. And I keep saying this word, the struggle, and the struggle. I'm talking about the struggle for liberation that we're engaged in collectively, and you become a lifer. Like Brandon said, you commit your life to it. Like, we are lifers with the Red Nation. Like, this project will continue. And the Red Nation's an organization and we're organized. But I said this during the march yesterday. We're also, what the Red Nation actually means is people of the earth. We're people of the earth, and that's like everybody, right? Five-fingered beings, that's everybody, regardless of where you're from or who you are. And so we're a movement towards liberation, but what we really are is we're a movement towards, you know, coming back into ourselves as five-fingered beings. And so it's a deeply material kind of thing to engage in. And when you come back into yourself in that way, through the actual struggle with other people who are also struggling towards liberation, it becomes this wholeness that you live, that lives inside of you. It's like your spirit changes. I'm gonna cry again. And that's why it's so moving to me, because it literally speaks to my spirit every time I get to be around, I get to be in these spaces, or I get to have time with my Red Nation comrades or my colleagues. Because we face a lot of violence and oppression. I think we made that really clear in the presentations that have been given at this conference. You know, I write a lot on gender and sexual violence. I talk and teach constantly about colonial violence. I'm always focused on violence because we have to be. We can't turn away. We can't turn away from police violence, right? Because that's the reality of the condition of our life under colonialism and capitalism as Indigenous people. But what I would like us to end on here is to celebrate and to acknowledge the spirit of resistance. It's not an ember, it's like thriving. Have you felt the energy of this conference? It's like a high level of not only like what people call wokeness politically, but like spiritually. It's been fucking badass, like fierce and beautiful, right? I have felt that from when we weren't, because we didn't know what to expect. And from that opening moment, you could feel it. It immediately snapped into place like that. And I could feel it in my body, in my spirit, in my mind, and everything. And so, as much as the violence and the oppression that we try to liberate ourselves from, that doesn't go away until we make it go away. What I want us to do is to celebrate our resistance, to celebrate that spirit of liberation that lives inside each one of us. And that through this work it's our humanity. We bring ourselves back into our humanity through struggling for liberation. And that can never be taken from us, will never go away. And from what I can tell in terms of, because I'm a historian of movements too, what's happening right now, like politically and historically, isn't exceptional, but we're in a new moment where things are happening. And we're actually in that right now. I don't know exactly where it's going or what's going to happen, how it's going to kind of culminate, but we're in a revolutionary moment. And I wouldn't have said this even a year and a half ago, that we're in a revolutionary moment, but I think that's what's happening. And I think even 2 years ago, we could not have held a successful conference like this in Gallup. I never could have predicted Standing Rock would have happened, but it just happened. And like, people were ready. Like, people were like, oh my God, it's happening, the rev's happening. And like millions of people showed up and all across the world showed up and supported that movement. And so what the people have been doing. I mean, I study this, right? I try to pay attention to what the people have been doing in the last 2 to 3 years, and not just the indigenous liberation struggle. There are all other kind of uprisings happening, right? Not just here in Turtle Island, but all over the world. It's showing me that something is shifting. And I even think that Trump's election demonstrates to us that something is shifting. And I also do a lot of history on resource extraction and Dene liberation movements, particularly in the 20th century. And what they said, what John Red House and Larry Casus and Melanie Yazzie, the matriarchs up on Black Mesa and Big Mountain, have been telling us for 45 years, 45, 50 years, it's all been about resource extraction, which is really about this sort of politics in a system of death. It's a death drive. And that's a lot of what that revolutionary moment was about in the 60s and the 70s that our people engaged in, and we're engaging in it again, because resource extraction is still a reality as Indigenous people. And things have changed a bit, but we're actively, maybe about a year or two into the next revolutionary period, I think, of the Indigenous liberation struggle. So what we're doing here today, in a place like Gallup, which like epitomizes the intersection of all of this, the political economy of violence that drives settler colonialism and capitalism, is historic. And actually it took me a while to like hit myself on the head, be like, holy shit. What we're doing is like really historically important. And so we're making the history of the revolution right now. Everybody in this room. And that being the case, it's an incredibly terrifying, but also an incredibly beautiful time to live in, because we have the power, and we have the power, and we're reclaiming the power to demand liberation. And even though we face repression, we face backlash, it will likely get worse. We are in control of our own destiny, and we're reinforcing it and enforcing it in a new way that only time will tell, and we have to keep organized. But I predict, I really predict in the next couple of years that something really momentous is coming, and we are all a part of it. And it's like the prophecy, it feels like that to me. It feels like we're in some sort of prophetic moment. We talk about this a lot in the Red Nation. And so I just wanted to impart upon you the significance of what we've done here today, and what I've seen, and to let you know that, you know, I'm in this with you until the end, whatever that looks like. Hopefully it's decolonization. That's what we're working for always, every day, always decolonization for everybody. It's not just a patch or the thing that's on my laptop. And this is the beginning, I think, of a lot of really amazing organizing, where we're going to be able to bring forces together here in Gallup, and much more in the Navajo Nation to, as as Shemai said, to bring down these monsters. And it's now or never. Something that Standing Rock showed me, and understanding the history of movements against resource colonization, the reason why climate change has become, well, A, it's an actual thing, right? And so that's scary, but also why it's become such an important element of the Indigenous liberation struggle is because we're in an epic shift. There's like a paradigm shift happening. That's what I'm calling these moments, like a revolutionary moment. And this paradigm shift has everything to do with resource extraction, and has everything to do with how human life is valued or undervalued, which is why the term Black Lives Matter, I think, has also come into existence in the last handful of years. And so we're fighting over life. We're fighting for life. That's why water is life, Miniwachoni, right? That's why that word life is in that phrase. And this is it. Like, this is what we're struggling for and we're building for. I have no doubt that more Oak Flats, more Niagalbaina, more Standing Rocks are going to happen. And it's the people who drive those movements. And so as long as the Red Nation is dedicated to and embedded within our own people, and the spirit of resistance that lives in the hearts of our people. I don't think we can go wrong. I don't think anybody else can go wrong. So those are my comments. They were really unprepared because I was like crying and having that very emotional. But I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for being here. I think I consider you all now a part of the Red Nation family, because we're all just people of the earth, right? And so yeah, if you guys, are we good? Anything else to say? I think Nick wants to say one more thing, but yeah, you can.